So you're probably going to get sick of hearing me refer to these two styles by their full names over and over again, but I don't think there's a good enough workaround to avoid that. I thought about simplifying things and just saying Czech Pilsner, but I think it's still important to differentiate between them, even though, yes, they are really very similar styles. That will become apparent right off the bat here when I read the overall impressions for each style. So first up, Czech Pale Lager. The BJCP defines it as a lighter-bodied, rich, refreshing, hoppy, bitter pale Czech lager having the familiar flavors of the stronger Czech premium pale lager Pilsner type beer, but in a lower alcohol, lighter-bodied, and slightly less intense format. And for the Czech premium pale lager, it says rich, characterful, pale Czech lager with considerable malt and hop character and a long, rounded finish. Complex, yet well-balanced and refreshing. The malt flavors are complex for a Pilsner-type beer, and the bitterness is strong, but clean and without harshness, which gives a rounded impression that enhances drinkability. So, yeah, mostly the same. The premium has more complexity, but it's not going to be a big jump. If you tried these styles side by side, it might be readily apparent which is which, but otherwise, I don't know if you would even notice that they were different without being told. Maybe I'll call one pale and the other premium. That seems like it would work. I'll do that. So, the aroma on the Czech Pale has a light to moderate, rich, bready malt character. The same is true of the hoppiness, which will be spicy or herbal. No citrusy New World hops here. A faint caramel aroma is acceptable, as are light levels of diacetyl and fruity esters. With the premium, the aroma has the same bready maltiness, but it is more apparent. Medium to medium high, according to the guideline. Same goes for the spicy, floral, or herbal hop bouquet. I like this next line in the guide. It says, though the balance between the malt and hops may vary, the interplay is rich and complex. As with the pale, light diacetyl or very low fruity esters are acceptable. I should say the fruity esters in these beers are hop-derived, as opposed to coming from the yeast like in our previous styles. The lager yeast doesn't impart much in the way of flavor or aroma. The pale is light gold to deep gold in color, and the premium is just regular gold to deep gold. Both are very clear, brilliant, as the guide says, with a dense, long-lasting, creamy white head. The flavor of both styles will showcase the rich, bready malt and a pronounced hop bitterness. The hoppiness will not be aggressive, though. It will come off as more soft and round, with a floral spicy character. It won't be sharp or harsh. Both styles are flavorful and refreshing, with the premium packing a little more punch than the pale, both in terms of flavor and body. The malt may have a slight caramel character, and the overall balance can be either hoppy or malty, but it will never be overly one or the other. These are fairly balanced lager styles. Diacetyl or fruity esters are acceptable at low levels. Mouthfeel on the pale is medium light to medium with moderate carbonation. The premium has a medium body with low to moderate carbonation. I don't know why the carbonation would run lower with the premium, but that's what the guide says, so we'll roll with it. The Czech name for the pale lager is Svetli Vysepny Pivo, which just means light beer. There's no way I pronounced that correctly. Other beers in this general group are called Svetli Lezak, or light lager, which is where the premium pale lager would fall, and Svetli Specialny Pivo, special light beer. They have a completely different metric for beer classification in the Czech Republic. I'm not an expert on any of this, but I'm going to try to explain density scales. So, this is the specific gravity scale we use in the US. This is the ratio of the density of a substance to the density of a reference substance. With beer, that reference substance is water. There's some math equations involved, which I'm not going to get into, but basically, if you measure the original gravity of your wort before fermentation, and then measure the final gravity of your beer, this will give you an idea of the beer's alcohol by volume by showing you the change in density. As the yeast consumes the sugar in the wort, converting it into alcohol, the density decreases. This is how we measure density in the US. In the Czech Republic, And really, in most of Europe, they use a couple of different scales to measure gravity in beer and wine. In order of their development, they are the Balling scale, the Brick scale, and the Plato scale. They're all essentially the same thing, with each new one making small improvements upon the last. The Czech Republic and Germany will put the degrees Plato on the labels of some of their beers. This information will let educated drinkers know the alcohol content and attenuation of said beer. How useful that information is, well, that's debatable, but hey, I'm all for brewers putting as much information on their labels as possible. And that's about all I know about gravity in beer. I'll try to remember to grill Thomas on the subject. It's a more important thing for brewers than drinkers, I feel. I could be wrong. But hey, beer density scales are a good way to transition into the history of our beer styles today. And even if they're not, I'm going to say they are, so we can transition to the history. So just don't think about it too hard. The name Pilsner comes from the Czech city of Pilsen, where the style was born. Back then, the Czech Republic was still a part of Czechoslovakia, and before that, it was part of the Kingdom of Bohemia, which is why beers in this style will sometimes be referred to as Bohemian Pilsners. Now, this was a beer-making region long before Pilsners came along. There are historical records that indicate the people of this area, the Slavs, served beer to Byzantine envoys in 448 AD. Other records show that Bohemians were growing hops as early as 859 AD. Now, I found all this information on the site morebeer.com. So, there used to be a brewing magazine called Brewing Techniques. It ran throughout the 90s, I believe. Sometime after it went under, morebeer.com bought the rights to all the back issues, and they put the articles out as web posts. So, if you're interested in that kind of thing, you should check out morebeer.com. I will be quoting from them a few times today, and I'll put a link in the description to the article I'm quoting from. So, in 1295, the city of Pilsen is founded. It was built at the confluence of 4 waterways and near major trade routes. The Bohemian king who founded the city, Wenceslas II, also gave its citizens the right to make and sell beer from their homes. This was, of course, a very lucrative privilege, and the city thrived as a result. The townsfolk created brewing guilds, not only to keep the cost of materials down, but also as a way to accumulate knowledge to pass down to future generations of brewers. In the early 1500s, the Czechs were even producing beer publications centered on beer appreciation. These were the original beer nerds. But these good times didn't last forever. In 1618, a little incident known as the Defenestration of Prague led to the 30 Years' War. We talked about that one way back in our first episode. As it did to Bavaria, this war also devastated Bohemia, destroying a ton of its infrastructure, brewing related or otherwise. The quality of beer being produced during this time got so bad that in 1838, the brewers of Pilsen dumped 36 barrels of spoiled beer in the town square, right in front of City Hall. This led to the creation of a new brewing facility. Also around this time, a strain of bottom fermenting lager yeast was supposedly smuggled into Bohemia by some shady monk. A Bavarian lager brewer named Joseph Groll, who worked at this state-of-the-art brewing facility, took that yeast strain, combined it with locally sourced Saaz hops, used lighter kilned malts, and the famously soft water of the area to produce the world's first Pilsner in October of 1842. To be clear, this was not the first lager. Bavarian beers were being lagered since the 1400s, but these were dark beers, or if not dark, they were cloudy, like a Weiss beer. This beer, called Pilsner Urquell, was very different. Rich and round, pale and clear and clean, it took the world by storm. It didn't take long for breweries all over the world to copy the style. The German Pils, in particular, remains a standout, but even that one is quite different from the original. Like I said, we call lots of beers Pilsners, but the Czech Republic knows that there's only one true Pilsner. That distinctiveness has a lot to do with the characteristic ingredients used. Be it pale or premium, the water used to make these styles must be very soft, with a low sulfate and carbonate content. Saaz hops are traditional, as is Czech Pilsner malt and Czech lager yeast. That soft, low ion water also provides a distinctly soft, rounded hop profile, despite the high hopping rates, so says the guideline. It also says that these beers have more color, malt richness, and body than a German Pils, which is the next closest style. And again, the Czech Pale Lager is lighter and less intense than the Czech Premium Pale Lager. Just how much lighter and less intense, you ask? Well, let's go over the vital statistics of each to find out. The Pale has an IBU range from 20 to 35, whereas the Premium goes from 30 to 45. SRM for the Pale is 3 to 6, with the Premium going from 3.5 to 6, so no real difference there. That's straw colored to deep gold, either way. ABV on the Pale is from 3 to 4.1%, with the Premium's range being 4.2 to 5.8. So, not a ton of difference. Mostly in the ABV and hop bitterness. I still think they should be combined into one style, but what do I know? I've got nothing as far as commercial examples of Czech Pales go. The guide here lists a few, but I can't even begin to pronounce them. For the Czech Premium Pale, however, I can offer tons of great examples to try. There's Pilsner Kel, of course, but also Staropramen, Golden Pheasant, and Czech Var. Craft versions include Sierra Nevada Summerfest, Oscar Blues, Mama's Little Yellow Pills, New Belgium Pilsner, which was previously called Blue Paddle. Lots of examples of Czech Pilsners out there. Some are still referred to as Bohemian Pilsners, or Pilsners with an extra E in there, but those are all ways to distinguish these Czech versions from the more dry, more crisp, more carved up German Pils. And I believe we've covered everything as far as style guidelines go. I'm not a big lager guy overall, but I do really like Czech Pilsners. They're more complex than a lot of other lagers, I think. They're way better than any macro lagers out there, so if you think all lagers are like Bud Heavy or Miller High Life, I would recommend giving a Czech lager a go. You will be pleasantly surprised. Also pleasant, but maybe not a surprise, we've got some homebrewing tips and tricks coming up. We'll talk with the always pleasant Thomas and see how he feels about brewing Pilsners. Something tells me he's not a fan, but we'll see. Stick around, and we'll be right back.